It is my desire and my prayer that the Lord may help us to understand the need of help. Do you want to be helped? If you do, then help someone today, and you will be helped, as we will see later. The Bible text has very important thoughts there. So I wish to read again the text that was read before prayer. Isaiah chapter 41, verses 6 and 7. Isaiah 41, 6 and 7. They helped everyone his neighbor, and everyone said to his brother, "Be of good courage." So the carpenter encouraged the goldsmith, and he that smoothed with the hammer him that smote the anvil, saying, "It is ready for the soldering." And he fastened it with nails, that it should not be moved. In these Bible verses we find a word that is not there, but is implied there. And you know what is that word? Cooperation. Helping in case of need. The Bible verse begins with these thoughts. They helped everyone his neighbor. Who is exempt of helping? Nobody. It says everyone helped his neighbor. Neighbor here means anyone next to us that need help. And not only he helped, but he encouraged his neighbor. He was saying, "Be of good courage." And then here in verse 7, a few tradesmen are mentioned here. The goldsmith, one laborer that holds the thong, holding the material, another one, laborer also, hits with a hammer. And of all these here, which one is more important? You know what I say? No one of them is more important than the other. All of them are needed. I remember many years ago there was a strike in Lima, Peru, of the garbage collectors. And the garbage was mounted in front of the houses for one whole month. Now, in that situation, there was an epidemic disease going through the whole city because of the deterioration of the garbage. And you know, the garbage collectors in that situation were the most important men. If there was no one to hold the material for another one to hit with a hammer, the work would not be done. If the man with the hammer would not be there, the material or the fashion soldering would not be done. If the goldsmith was not there to frame and form the image that they wanted to make, the work would not be done. So, all of them were of very great importance. All of them. We here, every one of us, is very important. No one is more important than the other in his own sphere. This Bible verse says that when they all cooperated together, when they all helped to form the material they wanted to make, they fastened it and they said, "It's ready." And now they fastened it with nails, that it should not be moved. That's very, very interesting. Cooperation. Helping his neighbor. Helping those that have a need. And as we have sung here, help someone today. You know what? I want to sell you a car. It's very old. I do not want to tell its name or its brand. Later on, I will read it to you, the name of that car. But that car is loaded, and it has no engine, has no motor in that car. So, one has to push. But you may say, "Oh, Brother Sas, today is Sabbath, how can you sell?" Well, I tell you, this is legal, this is lawful, what I am going to offer you. You are not going to pay anything for it, but you may have it if you want to. And in that car, that old car, it's loaded. Two main subjects. In one seat are the commandments of God and the faith of Jesus, and in the other seat, the threefold angel's message. And this car has to be pushed downhill in a leveled road, uphill, through the desert, through the forests, and even across the sea. This car has to be pushed. It cannot be standing still. It has to move. I want to read a very interesting statement here, and you will find out the name of that car. And this is from Testimonies, Volume 3, page 540 and 541. Volume 3, 540, 541. We should have a spirit of progress. That means we cannot stand still. We have to move. We must guard continually against being fixed in our views, feelings, and actions. The work of God is onward. Reforms must be carried on, and we must take hold and help move on the car of reform. Did you get the name of the car? Car of reform, the Spirit of Prophecy says. And that car of reform must go through the whole earth. Energy tempered with patience and ambition and balanced wisdom is now needed by every Christian. The work of saving souls is yet left to us, the disciples of Christ. Not one of us is excused. Many have become dwarfed and stunted in their Christian life because of inaction. We should employ our time diligently while in this world. How earnestly should we improve every opportunity of doing good, of bringing others to a knowledge of the truth. Our motto should ever be onward, higher, surely, steadily onward to duty and to victory. Everybody is involved here. As we read here, not one of us is excused of helping. Now, how do you help a person that is carrying a heavy load on his shoulder? Climb up on his back? Is that a help for him? Or add some more burden to the burden that he has? Is that a help? You know, I want to read a few statements here which gives us a clear picture of our duties and responsibilities. 2 Peter 1, 10 to 13 is quoted, and then the servant of the Lord says, I thank God for these words of encouragement. I am reading from Manuscript Releases, Volume 17, page 315. Why should we not all stop grumbling and putting stones in front of the wheels of the car of progress? You know, when one pushes the car forward, pushing it uphill. What about if someone runs ahead and instead of pushing upward, he pushes the car downward? Is that a help? But while others, with all their effort, push the car uphill, he puts in front of the wheel stones which block the progress of the car. And you know what is that stone? Here says it's grumbling. Grumbling is a stone that is put in front of the wheel of the car. Another statement from Southern Watchman, September 4th, 1902. One thing all can do. Now let's see, what is one thing that all can do? They can avoid making the work of others unnecessarily hard by criticizing their efforts. Putting stones in front of the wheels of the car they are trying to push uphill. All of us, every one of us, can do one thing. Stop putting stone in front of the wheel of the car that others are pushing uphill. And what is that stone mentioned here? Criticism. Criticizing. You know what happens sometimes? When the service, divine service is finished, and they go home, then some people immediately start finding some fault in the subject that was presented, criticizing. If they are unwilling to help, to put their shoulder to the wheel, then let them at least refrain from hindering those who are working. God calls for workers who will refuse to discourage their fellow workers. You know, it may happen in many homes that the parents at home criticize some ministers, some officers of the church, criticize the subject presented, and this in front of their own children. And the children grow up and they lose their interest in the truth, because this is what they heard. Criticism. And the spirit of prophecy says that this is stone placed in front of the wheel of the car that the servants of God are pushing uphill. Another interesting statement from Review and Herald, April 7, 1885. The minister is not infallible, but God has honored him by making him his messenger. If his hearers listen to him as though he were not commissioned from above, they will not respect his words, nor receive them as the message of God. Their souls will not feed upon the heavenly manna. Doubts will arise concerning some things that are not pleasing to the natural heart, and they will sit in judgment upon the sermon, as they would upon the remarks of a lecturer, of a political speaker. As soon as the meeting closes, they will be ready with some complaints or sarcastic remarks, thus showing that the message, however true and needful, has not profited them. They esteem it not. They have learned the habit of criticizing and finding fault. And they pick and choose and perhaps reject the very things that they most needed. Crest Collection, page 38, says, "Brethren, shall we not cease criticizing one another?" This is a question. Shall we not cease criticizing one another? Shall we not blend? Shall we not be determined to unite, that we shall be one strong whole? Shall we not bind heart to heart? Shall we not seek to subdue our hasty spirit and learn to be as meek and lowly as the little children? You know, in the United States, towards the end of the 19th century, the work of God in the southern part of the United States were abandoned or forsaken. And a message came to some of the leaders that were in that field. And I'll read it from Southern Watchman, February 27, 1902. "The hand of God, working through unseen agencies, has opened the way for the advancement of the work in the southern field. But some of the men in responsible positions have hindered the progress of the work. Throughout the field, they have been men who have put stones before instead of behind the wheels of the car that the workers are trying to push uphill." Interesting. It says here that they put stones in front of the wheel, not behind the wheel, when they were pushing uphill. If they take stone and put behind the wheel, that would be a help. But put in front of the wheel, then the others are unable to push forward. And further, I read, "Unconverted men have brought forward theories and suggestions that have sown seeds of jealousy and evil surmising." You see here other stones that they placed in front of the wheel. Jealousy and evil surmising. The Lord can do without such men. The Lord does not need such men that put stumbling block or stones in front of the wheel of the car of reform. Manuscript Releases, Volume 3, 263 says, if men had ceased to find fault, here is another stone, finding fault. It's not hard to find fault in someone else. It's very hard to find fault in one's own self. But then find fault in somebody else is not hard. If men had ceased to find fault, if they had gone to work themselves, instead of placing stones before the wheels of the car, someone was trying to push uphill, the Lord would have been better pleased. Finding fault, stones that are placed before the wheels of the car. The Lord does not commend those who have hindered instead of taking hold to help to draw the load. He has blessed the workers who in the emergency acted a noble part. That is one interesting but very, very strong statement, but I think I will read it. It is taken from Signs of the Times, September 4, 1879. This is a very, very hard statement. There are in our churches those who profess the truth, who are only hindrances to the work of reform. They are clogs to the wheels of the car of salvation. This class are frequently in trial. Doubts, jealousies, suspicion are fruits of selfishness and seem to be interwoven with their very natures. Did you see what are these clogs that stop the wheel from moving forward? Doubts, jealousies, suspicion, and selfishness. These are clogs. And as we have read here, they are only hindrances to the work of reform. I shall name this class chronic church grumblers. Chronic church grumblers. They do more harm in a church than two ministers can undo. They are a tax to the church and a great weight to the ministers of Christ. They live in an atmosphere of doubt, jealousies, and surmisings. Much time and labor of the ambassadors of Christ are required to undo their work of evil and restore harmony and union in the church. This takes from the courage and strength of God's servants and unfits them for the work He has for them to do in saving perishing souls from ruin. God will reward these troublers of Zion according to their works. The ministers of Christ should take their position and not be hindered in their work by these agents of Satan. There will be enough of these to question and quibble and criticize, to keep the ministers of God constantly busy, if they will allow themselves to be detained from the great work of giving the last saving message of warning to the world. If the church has no strength to stand against the unsanctified, rebellious feelings of church grumblers, it is better to let church and grumblers go overboard together than lose the opportunity of saving hundreds who would make better churches and have the elements existing within themselves of strength and union and power. I remember in one country I was sent to reorganize a local church. That local church in the country was known as the University of Theology, because everybody knew, everybody had opinion, and they created such a problem that there were not two persons that they could agree. And when I arrived there and I saw the situation, I called them together. I said, "Brethren, I was sent here to reorganize this church, but I will not do it." And one sister who knew this statement here, he said, "You want to throw us overboard?" I said, "No, we don't want to throw you overboard. But if you do not solve your problem and stop criticism, and you do not solve your problem among yourselves, we have no other alternative. I will not reorganize the church now. You solve your problems, and then we will come back and reorganize the church." So what happened? The two main problem makers moved away. And the problem was solved there in the church. And we came back and we reorganized them. We are called to help. Help anyone that is in need. But mostly we are called to push ahead the car of salvation, the car of reform, which carries the commandments of God and the faith of Jesus and the threefold angel's message. And this has to go to every part of the world. You know, it is possible that there will be some who will not put any hindrance in front of the wheel, will not put any stone. He will have none of these defects that was pointed out in this reading. But they still do not help. You know, in the time of Joshua, in the time of the judges, there was a city called Meroz. And we read in the Bible, in Judges chapter 5, verse 23. Judges 5:23. "Curse ye Meroz, said the angel of the Lord, curse ye bitterly the inhabitants thereof, because they came not to the help of the Lord, to the help of the Lord against the mighty. What was the sin that Meroz committed? In Testaments for the Church, Volume 2, gives us the answer. Testaments for the Church, Volume 2, 427. What was the sin of Meroz? Doing nothing. What was the sin of Meroz? Doing nothing. It was not because of great crimes that they were condemned, but because they did not come up to the help of the Lord. If we do not put stumbling blocks in front of the wheels, if we do not put stones, if we do not put any hindrance, but we cross our arms and we do nothing, then we commit the sin of Meroz. This is why we have read in the beginning, everyone helped his neighbor. Everyone. In Signs of the Times, October 28, 1897, it says here, "Curse ye Meroz, said the angel of the Lord, curse ye bitterly the inhabitants thereof, because they came not to the help of the Lord against the mighty." These words mean much to those who have no spirit to labor. The curse that was pronounced upon Meroz means what? Means much to those who have no spirit of labor. Those who do not want to help. No desire to wear the yoke or lift the burdens in the service of Christ. Our faith must be a living faith. It must work by love and purify the soul. We are to study to show ourselves approved, workmen that need not to be ashamed. We are to employ our entrusted capabilities in God's service, thus demonstrating our fidelity to Him. If we do only a third of what our talents enables us to do, with the other 2/3 of our power, we are working against Christ. This is a very strong statement. If we use of our talents only 1/3 for Christ, the other 2/3 is against Him. Manuscript Release, Volume 18, 325 says, "Shall not this be the time when all who are in connection with God shall come to the front and show their colors? Shall it be seen that men and women step back and show no interest, no zeal, no earnest effort when help is needed? When the car drags heavily, then is the time for everyone to put shoulders to the wheels, not to stand back giving orders or accusing the ones who are trying to push the load, or criticizing everything they do, because it is not done in their way and after their ideas. we should put the shoulders together and push forward the car which is carrying the commandments of God, the faith of Jesus, and the threefold angel's message. And if we help someone, you know who will be helped? We ourselves. An interesting thing happened, and this is taken from Gospel Workers 198, 199. It says, a man who journeying on a winter's day through deep drifts of snow became benumbed by the cold, which was almost imperceptibly freezing his vital powers. He was nearly chilled to death and was about to give up the struggle for life when he heard the moans of a fellow traveler who was also perishing with cold. His sympathy was aroused, and he determined to rescue him. He chafed the ice-cold limbs of the unfortunate man, and after considerable effort raised him to his feet. As the sufferer could not stand, he bore him in sympathizing arms through the very drift he had thought he could never get through alone. When he carried his fellow traveler to a place of safety, the truth flashed home to him that in saving his neighbor, he had also saved himself. His earnest efforts to help another had quickened the blood that was freezing in his own veins and sent a healthy warmth to the extremities of his body. Brethren, we must be cooperative. We must help. And if we help someone today, we are going to help our own selves. Trying to save someone else, we will save our own selves. And this is true in the church, and this is true in the family. If in the family one of the members of the family commit a mistake, let's say a girl drops a plate and breaks the plate. It was not intentional, but it happened. Instead of criticism, instead of censure, should be helped and show that it was not her intention to break that plate. Helping with good words, with encouragement, because the Bible verse that we have read in Isaiah, it says, everyone said to his brother, be of good courage. And this is needed in a family. This is needed in the church. And we should avoid putting stones in front of the wheel of the car of reform. May the Lord bless us and help us that we may understand this message and apply in our daily lives. This is my wish and my prayer. Amen.
Thank you.